I personally and passionately believe in the rule of law as an important principle of democracy. I'm happy to be here with brave people to talk others and convey the important messages for making a better society with fraternity. So we need definitions by what do you mean by respect, and what do you mean by cooperation, and to the outcome and the justice. We have a great variety of talks ahead of us. And this session will be chaired by Judge Dennis Davis, one of the South Africa's most respected legal minds.
Particularly because this is an incredibly important event, judges, lawyers, and Afghan refugees. Why do I say that? Because as a South African, during the height of apartheid, when we were struggling against an authoritarian, awful, racist, and sexist regime, which was determined to destroy life for the vast majority of South Africans, those of us, and there were many, of course, who were in the struggle, looked to the outside world and got extraordinary support from many people here and around the world. And it's therefore an unbelievable honor for me to be asked to chair this, because it seems to me that we South Africans, who understand precisely what international pressure can do in order to alleviate suffering of others, in our case under apartheid, that we should also make our contributions. Thank you very much. Helena, you need no introduction, but to be perfectly frank, for people like myself, it's an absolute thrill to chair a session in which you're in. I was talking to a very distinguished silk in South Africa, a woman today, and I said, I was going to be chairing a session. Helena Kennedy was there, and she said, when I grow up, even though she's a silk, I'd like to be like Helena Kennedy.
I just want to tell you that it was just so lovely hearing Burak speak about how much the rule of law meant to him, and the protection of human rights, and his belief that human rights are universal values, and that ones that everyone yearns to live in freedom. Everyone yearns to be loved and to love. There are yearnings which are about the human condition, and they're encapsulated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and in our human rights legislations, where we're lucky to have them. And I just love it that here we have Burak, who's becoming a lawyer, and who loves the law the way that I love the law, the way that you love the law. And if you're a practitioner in the law, it sort of gets into your bloodstream. And so when I was told that the women judges in Afghanistan were now basically had a war had been declared on them, because the Taliban had immediately opened the gates of the prisons and allowed all those who had been sentenced by these many women judges in the years since there had been a return of women into the law, that we had encouraged. The International Bar Association had actually created the Afghan Independent Bar back in 2009. And so we were involved in training programs and so on. And although I wasn't the director then, I was still involved with the International Bar. I actually co-chaired the Institute of Human Rights at that time. And we did a lot of work insisting that the law schools brought women in to and opened the gates to women too. Women became judges. We encouraged that the Istanbul Convention to eliminate violence against women should be introduced into domestic law in Afghanistan, and women's courts were established. And Fawzia, she'll tell you herself, was a judge in the appeal court dealing with violence against women and the crimes that were committed against women, particularly because so much child marriage, forced marriage, domestic violence in the streets, because we imagined it all ended, but it didn't. And if women were considered to be in any way behaving inappropriately because they weren't dressed properly, men would beat them, and they were being brought before courts, and the women in those courts were sentencing them. These are women who are my sisters-in-law. And I always feel that about, we use those expressions as the way of you describing your brother's wife, but these were other women like me who were in the law to imbue it with a woman's perspective, to make law a discourse in which women's voices were also heard. And they undoubtedly brought really important contributions to the rule of law in Afghanistan. And as Baruch was saying, democracies exist, voting's not enough. There has to be the rule of law. There has to be a vital civil society. There has to be freedom of expression and a free media. And all that's going, it's gone. Women journalists are under attack now in Afghanistan too, and they're in hiding as well. Every day I received a text from somebody in terror, living in a basement. Fawzia will tell you, because one of the changes that's taken place in the last 20 years is also that social media and the iPhone is available to everybody. And so the women all know what's happening to their sisters back in Afghanistan. So as a lawyer who believes that these women were making a great contribution to the rebuilding of their nation, who were many of them actually were the judges in the narcotics courts, which we funded and helped support from the UK. And why? Because the narcotics trafficking in heroin was one of the ways in which the Taliban financed itself. And in order to do, terrorism domestically, but also terrorism internationally. But also, that's the heroin that ends up on the streets in our cities, being sold to those who become addicted to it and causing the havoc of the social problems that go hand in hand with heroin addiction. So, these women were not just protecting and building their own society, they were doing a job of work for all of us, building a better world. And that's why I feel that we have a duty of responsibility and care to them. And so when I got these calls and I received these messages, I didn't imagine for a minute I would end up chartering planes, let me tell you that for nothing. I mean, we've just got to keep at it. And of course, it's not helped by the fact that so many governments went into government, populist stuff, anti-immigration and anti, opening your doors to people from other places. We know that, othering of people. And we've got to somehow, we've got a COVID pandemic, but we've also got a pandemic of populist governments that have got there and blame immigrants for the nation's problems when we know that's not true. And so there are struggles to overcome in getting nations to welcome these people who have really been doing a job of work for all of us in making making the rule of law mean something. And now the sad day has come where the Taliban are back in force, but it won't be forever, because the yearning for freedom lives in everyone's heart, and people will decide that this is not what they wanted. And there are women there who, whose sisters and brothers know what they were doing. And I just can't believe that this is the end story. Afghanistan will come back again. And but in the meantime, we have to shelter those who were doing such important work on all of our behalf. And I flew out to Athens after we got that first flight out, and Fawzia was on it with Farad, her husband, and her 4 girls. And I went out to try and persuade the Minister of Immigration in Greece, who'd said 1 flight and that's it. And I went back out and I begged him and I said, please let us get more of these women out. And I said, I'll raise the money and we'll pay for their expenses, which and I made a pact, a Faustian pact, that I would also get them out by Christmas. So my clock is running down, and so I need the help of all of you out there to help me to persuade the British government to take some of my women in. And if you've influence anywhere else in the world, help me to do that too. But Fawzia and I, we had a sort of wonderful coming together in Athens, and we had a sort of a gathering there, and then of course we met at the airport when she arrived, and it was lovely to get to throw my arms around her and to say I'm so happy that she's. But you're a wonderful woman, Fawzia, and you've done such great work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please don't thank me. It's really lots of hands went into this, but you're a woman who deserves it, and you've done such great work. This is a woman who was the head of the Court of Appeal for crimes against women, so she'll tell you her own story. Fawzia,
but you are the
let's
best.
pray.
Helena, thank you so much. Fawzia, I wonder whether you could tell us a bit about your story. Thank you very much, Helena. Thank you for all your efforts too. Fawzia, if you could tell us about your story, just about yourself, and precisely what the conditions are in your country, that we greatly appreciated. And it's a great honor to ask you to speak to us.
Yes. Yes. Thank you very much for this best. Also, you are present here, who are present in the current this discussion. Thanks for Mrs. Baroness, and she's the best woman. I think we had it in Afghanistan very more cases about violence against women. In every year, we solve it more than 300 cases about the murder cases, and also rape cases, and everything, every article we have to in this elimination. It's very important for us or in Afghanistan. It's all of women in Afghanistan have very more difficulties in our lives with their husband, with their family, and also about our situation. It's very important for us because the Afghan women had it very violent cases in Afghanistan, and also they had the first time I was head of a legal department in Ministry of Women Affairs, and I solved 6,000 cases in 1 year. It's very more cases. It's very more. But we had very difficulties. Then we established this elimination for the women about the violence against. They have very more difficulties, and also very our life is very not good, and our situation is very bad.